Welcome, everybody, to the Thinking Cap. We're excited today to have a special guest, Heather Holloway from Holloway Media Services. What's up, Heather?
Hey, what's up, people?
Unfortunately, Amanda Hopprich, who is my co-host, is sick today, so we wish her well as she's on the road to recovery from a little bit of that fall gross cold season that she's dealing with. But happy to be here with Heather today to talk about a really important topic, which is about storytelling, which is such a critical part of community action. So thank you again, Heather, for being here. We're excited to have you.
Well, it's a thrill and an honor. Thank you so much for the opportunity to jam with you, and I will be playing the part of Amanda, even though I don't have the long hair, but we wish her well and soon.
It's true. You got to get a good lash fill to really harness Amanda's energy,
Oh.
just so you know. And for those of you who haven't seen us, that's a critical part of Amanda's look. So again, right, we're here to talk about really storytelling, and I one of the things that I want to level set on first is a little bit about the structure of community action. So as we've talked about before, we have 43 agencies across the state of Pennsylvania. We touch every single county, and each structure of our organizations are vastly different, right? To address the local need and responsive about what the local funding streams are, et cetera. But a critical part of not just our agencies, but also the association is telling the story of what our agencies do. And a lot of times, right, in the world of fund development and fundraising and communications, we find that the staffing structure, again, is very different. Some have devoted marketing professionals, some have devoted fundraising professionals, some have a marriage of those two roles, and some have none. And so we're always trying to educate our agencies on just the basics of storytelling. And so from that vantage point, right, one of the things that was really embedded in me is this idea of if you can tell the story passionately and authentically, it goes really, really far. And I know that this is something that you're really passionate about, is about telling story authentically, right? So I think what are some of the cornerstones from your perspective, and what advice would you give to someone who's really starting out in being the face of their organization, just starting out to try to have, part of the responsibility is telling the story. What's some of the cornerstones of that? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about my own experience with Holloway Media Services and being the face of Holloway, right? It's my name on the business. So it makes sense that I'm the one out there, carrying the rally flag and selling the
Absolutely.
business. So I've been lucky that in my career, in my 2, 3 decades of professionally working, I mean 3 decades. I mean, let's go. No, 2 decades. Okay, yeah, 2 decades.
I don't like doing that
Yeah.
math, to be
Yeah,
clear.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, no math, no math. No cap math today. Anyway, so but for 2 decades, I worked in news, so television and radio. And I am so thankful for that experience because it really taught me how to trim the fat, get down to, the nitty-gritty of the who, what, where, when, and why of the deal. And so I had to become very good at getting somebody to feel something in as little as 30 seconds.
right. Yeah.
And then I was able to take all of that experience and turn it into a business at Holloway Media Services where we do social media marketing. Difference being television and radio has a longer shelf life.
Sure.
You can have one story that you run for decades. Think Cadbury Bunny. If you think Cadbury eggs, right? You hear that
Sure.
buck, 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 right? Right? That commercial that started back in the mid 90s. They still air that commercial today. Why? It's a really fun, cute story. Seeing a lion with little bunny.
That's immediately what I think about is that lion. Rawr.
Rawr. Yeah, right, exactly. But they were able to cleverly, in a fun way, share their brand. So, if you're thinking Easter, you think Cadbury bunnies, right? Well, how do we do that um, with what we're doing today with digital marketing? Because it has such a short shelf life. Well, we have to trim the fat and get to the real deal, the heart of the matter. And with the work you do, you have those stories everywhere all day. So now how do we bring this all together? How do you as an individual guiding an agency share stories that matter? Well, it sort of kind of does start with you as the leader of the agency. What are your values? There's a reason why you're working for a community agency association. What is that? What's your why? You know, you've ever heard of Simon Sinek?
Hmm.
Start with why. You know, it couldn't be truer, but it's often difficult because we want to go with the how we do the things.
Sure.
How do we go about social determinants of health? How do we go about funding this initiative versus that initiative? That's not the heart of the matter. It's why we're doing these things.
Yeah.
So if you can marry your beliefs and your values that are relevant to the organization you're working with and for to the rally cry of the organization, that's what moves mountains. That's what creates movements.
Yeah, it's interesting that you put it in that context because that's part of the way that we've tried to think about how we tell the story at CAP about our agencies. It's not so much about each of the programs, and that's part of our branding challenge, right? Because every agency has a different approach. Every agency has a different list of programs that they manage. It's not about that. At the end of the day, it's what are the pieces that really what's the feeling, right? What's the impact that local person? And I think that's the one thing I really appreciate about all of our agencies is that every single one of our executive directors, our case managers, the frontline staff, they all have a personal connection to this work, either because they might have been a client or they had lived experience or
Yeah.
they've impacted so many people's lives and they've heard the thanks. And so I think that mission sort of, right, a connection to mission approach is so super critical.
Yeah.
And people know when you care, right? There's a different tone in your voice. There's a different way you move your head. There's a different way that you lean into the conversation. You feel that. You're
Yeah.
so directly.
Yes, because we're all energetic beings. I'm gonna go just a little woo here,
Yeah,
but
go
we're
for it.
all made of energy, and that energy doesn't lie. Like you said, right? It's that sixth sense. It's the brain, the gut brain, and then the physical brain. It's like you can tell, you can smell it. If it ain't, if
Right.
it's not good, you can smell it. You know
Right,
what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then how do we craft messages
Yeah.
that are authentic, that you can break through the digital wall? Well, I'll tell you, the people that you're helping really should be writing your copy. The people that you're helping, you must right now, if you're going to use any marketing, you must be a better listener than you are a talker, because when you go to speak online, on social, on email, on press releases, on the news, on interviews, on podcasts just like this,
Sure.
if you want to be authentic, you have to come from a lived experience. And you may not be the person on the street that needs your help. So you better go and get that experience somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And that's by asking and listening.
Yeah, I think that's really very valid. And I know that part of the conversation, I want to just acknowledge that for our agencies, part of the challenge sometimes is how do I be respectful of the client and not make it feel like you're using the client? Because we want to be really thoughtful of creating an equitable, accessible, thoughtful space for them and not, using their experience for what feels like the organizational good. So there's a way to do it in a respectful manner. But I want to acknowledge that that's part of sometimes the conversation that happens on an agency level. And so I think to your point, there's a way to capture the story. You don't have to use the picture of the individual, right?
Yeah.
But having what's in the thank you card, right, that you receive following somebody's success, and I think listening to the client stories and making sure you have capacity to listen to the client stories so that you can really hear is
Yeah.
really, I think, a critical part of that. So I think the other challenge, and we've talked about this in our work with Holloway Media, right? Like part of CAP's journey of trying to tell the story of our agencies and making sure that we get that approach right and building out our content library and all of those pieces has been part of a lot of the conversations you and I have had. We have a branding challenge because not every agency is called community action. While we've been around for officially 60 years this year on the whole in community action, unless a partner agency has been working with a local agency, unless you've worked alongside one of our organizations, unless you've been a client of one of our organizations, you may not know about who community action is, right, on the whole. And so in thinking about how to really you've heard a little bit about the complexity of our organizations. How do you start to build that brand awareness? What are some of the things that you want to share with those that are listening about how to establish brand, right? In just a really basic sense. I think it's an important thing to understand.
Yeah.
What advice would you give?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two things that make up your brand. You have the visual component. So this is your color, your logo, all the items that you're going to bring your mission to life. It could be a certain style of photos. Maybe you have a certain um you make it really cool tones, or you have warm tones, like, or you crunch the blacks, right? Like Nike does this a lot. It makes it look sporty,
Yeah.
you know. So you have your visual component, then you have your verbal component. And the verbal component are, what are the words we're using? More importantly, what are the words we're not going to use? So at Holloway Media Services, we have our logo, which is a little stamp that it can stand alone, like the Nike swoosh, right?
Right.
If you saw the Nike swoosh out in the wild, and if you've not been living in a cave for the last 40 years, if you saw that swoosh, you'd be like, Nike,
Right. One of the most
right?
recognized brands in the US and
It
in the
is
world. And in the
in the
world.
world.
Yeah.
It's the
Right.
global
Global.
brand, yeah, leader. So you have that, but that comes with time. That comes with educating the audience. Nike just didn't come out and have the swoosh and everybody understand that. That came over time. It's the credibility you build, but that swoosh is the promise that this is what you can expect when you purchase our product. So Holloway Media Services, we have our little mark, our little HMS square, but then you have the square plus the name. So you have your logo. Holloway Media Services has a particular brand palette, and the reason why I picked that brand palette, it's neutral, earthy tones. I want you to sort of get a calming sense of if you're going to work with us and what we're about. So it goes down to that. I mean, this is like psychological level.
Look,
But
marketing, there's a reason why we buy things, right? There's a reason why we
exactly.
lean into
Oh,
things. And I think
yes,
not to interrupt, but I think that's part of what I would challenge us to think about in nonprofit spaces. We're a tax code, we're not a business model, right? So
hmm
how do we use the power of the for-profit world to better our
yeah,
brands and understand how the psychology plays out? I think it's an
yeah.
important thing. I think it just feels a little icky sometimes when you think about it that way if you've been in nonprofit space your entire career, but I would encourage us to start to think about how to use, right, the for-profit world to benefit the things that we're doing.
Listen, the tactics are there for everyone. And
Right?
I want the folks that are there for the greater good to use these tactics so
Yes.
that we can continue to help in greater. Not that I want you guys to ever be out of a job, but
Right.
let's end poverty, you
Right.
know?
Right. Yes,
So then,
absolutely.
then we can do clean water. I don't know. We'll go and get the next one. But
Right.
but so what you need is a solid visual component. Like I said, fonts, colors, and your logo. And that needs to be replicated everywhere. Email signatures, business cards, letterhead, website, social media. It all needs to be the same over and over and over again. That's how you get recognition. That's how you get people to understand who you are. That's how you build your promise. And then the other thing are words. With Holloway Media Services, we have eliminated aggressive language because for me, my personal belief is language matters. The words we use matter. So you won't hear us shooting emails. You won't hear us blowing up chats. You won't hear us doing it. It sounds like a war zone.
Right.
Like we go there, it's two birds, one scone. It's like that's the level, but
Yep.
that's my brand.
Sure.
And if you believe in those things, you will work with me. So if you can get people to feel by being relatable with your colors, logo, and words, they will take an action. And that's what we're about here
Yeah.
with all of our community action associations.
Well, and so I will share this. So when I first started here at CAP, which we're coming up on my 3-year anniversary, when I first saw our brand when I was going through the interview process, it was sort of like these very 70s, 80s purple pinks. We looked like a law firm when I looked at our
Mm,
brand, and not necessarily an exciting one. And no, certainly not throwing any shade at my predecessors who went through that logoing process, but different time. We looked our brand from a third party perspective, having never heard about community action before I got here, looked like, we were established in the 70s, which the association was. And, it looked like something that was very sort of stoic, right? And so when we've joked a lot in our rebranding that we've rebranded hard, but we did that intentionally, right? We wanted people to recognize that we were part of community action. So we selected the Huggy Heart, which is a part of our logo and part of our national logo, because there's power in national logo.
yeah.
We kept our name because our members knew us by that name, but outsiders didn't necessarily. And then you see, like to your point, right? You see that brand on just about everything, to a fault, it feels like. But we do that intentionally. We also ask our members to include our logo in their materials because it unifies us, and there's power in
Yes.
that unity,
Yes.
right? And so
Yeah.
we want to make sure that that's interwoven in our network because we are a network of human service providers.
Yes.
The critical
Yes.
part.
Yes. And I love that logo. I mean, hands around a heart. My goodness gracious, arms around a heart. Does that not display care? Is that not what we're trying to do? Care and be for
Right.
one another. So, like, the logo speaks volumes. If I
Yeah.
say golden arches, what do you know? What are you going to
Right.
say?
Right. McDonald's. I
Yeah,
know. I was there.
exactly.
I was
And
there
it's
this morning.
not, yeah, me too. And not only is it logo, but if I go ba 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 ba, you're like, I'm loving it.
Right.
There's even an audio component. So we don't need to get, unless you're doing a podcast and you can have a little audio stinger, you don't need to get to that level. But
Right.
my goodness gracious, logo, colors, fonts, repeat, repeat, repeat. Have a brand guide. Whenever you're working with somebody, you hand them that brand guide and say, this is how you work with me. If you're on stage a lot and you speak a lot, well, you need to hand over that brand guide to, if they're, creating slides for you, it
Yep.
must be this way because I'm building a brand here, and
Right.
that takes time and effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to that end, going back to again when I first started here, it was one of the other things that I wanted to be really mindful of is before we went out and started telling the story, what were we driving people to, right? Like if we were going to send people to a website, did that website tell the story that we wanted to? And so I think you also have to sit back. And so my next question for you is going to be about the starting block, particularly for those executive directors who don't have marketing experience. They may not have a communications person on their team. What's the right starting block for them? But I think, I'll reflect on my own journey here is to say, for me, it was taking this look holistically at who we were as a third party perspective, looking at the website and saying, okay, what really is the story that we're telling? And as a candidate for the job here, I was like, I don't understand what the association does, and I sure as heck don't understand who our members are and what they necessarily do. And so we
Mm,
have to reset hard on that, right? Because that needs to be the cornerstone in which we send everyone to.
mm-hmm.
And so again, I'll go back to really the question here. If you're an executive director spot that doesn't have necessarily a marketing firm, I mean, of course, shameless plug here, you could always reach out to a great partner like Holloway Media Services. We are,
Thank you.
we work with you on a couple different things, and we're really happy with the work that we do. So shameless plug for you. But if you don't have the funds to do that, how and where do you start? And I will say this, shameless plug for us, you can always come to us at CAP and we'll help you identify some of those immediate things. But what could you start? What should a new executive director or executive director who's really looking to establish brand, what are some of the things that you would encourage them to do that they could do on their own first and foremost?
Yeah, and I know this is going to sound like a heavy list or maybe a heavy lift, but a website number one, websites, they're a must. It's not a nice to have anymore. Back in the day when websites were fresh, it was a nice to have, but now it's a must. And especially with organizations like yours, Beck, where you could help them establish that website, to other, plug and play things. The access is there. The access is there. So we need a website. Uh, the other thing would be we're spending over 4.5 hours on our phones daily. And guess where most of that time is being spent?
Social media.
On social media. So really, truly, it's okay. Think about what is the purpose? We need to be intentional with anything we do, any marketing initiative, anything to grow our brand. We must understand, we're going back to the why. Why would we do this, right? Well, one, a website, if somebody needs help and they have access to the internet, what are they going to do most likely if they need help and they're searching for an answer? They're going to go to Google, right? I
Yes,
need help
absolutely.
with. That's what we're doing. And I'm hearing reports that Google is in trouble because, a couple years from now, we're not even going to go to Google. We're just going to have AI on our phone and say, "Tell me where."
Right.
So search engines may be the dinosaur. We don't even know. But for now, for today, and for the next few years, you must be on and have a website presence. Because if your folks are able to get to the internet, they're going to Google.
Yeah.
They know that, right?
Yeah.
They may not have a social media platform. They may not have a phone. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the level here, but if they do have a phone, they're going to social next.
Yep. Well, and from a funding perspective, right, that really also helps makes a funder feel secure about the level of ability to then deliver to showcase the fact that you've partnered with them. And that also matters for them because it also creates brand awareness for them about what their brand is aligned with, which gives their
Yeah.
customers a feeling, right, about all of these pieces that weave together then. And so in order to really, I think, effectively fundraise, you be able to have a platform to also lift them up. If that's a part of what that funder wants, which for the larger businesses, right, that's usually a part of what that agreement looks like. So I think it's an important consideration. So I'm trying to think about if there's anything else I want to kind of underscore here. I mean, I guess here's what I will say about CAP for our agencies who are listening. If you're an executive leader or a member of an organization that we support today, just remember that we can help you start in that journey and try to help you think about some of those pieces. And for us, the question that I usually always start with is about audience and who you're trying to communicate to primarily.
That was going to be my next thing, and not to cut
No,
your
no,
flow off
please.
there, but I'm talking about website, I'm talking about social. um Website, who's it for?
Yep.
Is it for the funder? Is it for the client or the member that you need to help? um is it for both?
Right. And there can be a customer journey for both of those people,
Yeah,
but
right,
you have to be intentional about thinking about it.
right,
Right.
exactly.
And if Amanda was here, this is one of the things that she feels really strongly about. And we've worked in a few organizations together, and it's something that we always go back to when we explore how to rebuild or look at a website and make sure that we're meeting the expectations and needs of that customer journey. It's an important thing there, right? And so
Yeah,
for us, our social media speaks primarily to our membership because we're
yeah,
trying to lift them up, right, and help them feel good about the work that they are doing. Our website is from the perspective of the general public more than not, right? And trying to educate about what our agencies do. And then we have our content for our members, right, behind a locked
yes,
area to give them access. So our website, we've decided, really isn't about speaking to our members necessarily. There's a piece of it, but it's
yeah,
primarily outside. And if you're looking for our website, remember the caap.org. Again, shameless plug here.
love it.
So my last question for you, I want to make
Yep.
sure to keep our episode here succinct because I know we've gotten a little bit of feedback. We want to make sure to be respectful of people's time, and we know you don't have a lot of it. So my question for you to wrap us up here is typically our question is that, the huggy heart of the matter and asking people about what myths you're busting about community action. But in this instance, I'm going to ask you kind of a little bit of a different version of that question. What have you been surprised about in working with maybe CAP and talking to some of our agencies? What's been probably the most surprising part of your work with us over the course of, I guess we're coming up on maybe a year now or so?
Yeah.
Anything in particular that's surprised you about getting to know us and our network of agencies? Because you were also just a part of our conference recently.
Yeah, when a fantastic conference. Thank you so much for the invitation to be there.
Of
It was
course.
phenomenal to be in a room of all these superheroes. And you're a lovely bunch. I love it so much.
Yeah.
I think for me is two things. One, how wide and spread you are, but that there is almost like a best kept secret there
Yeah,
that
really.
we're that's why we're having this conversation, and that's why you're here to help all the agencies. So just how large this network is, um, and then the services that you provide. Uh, I I'm lucky. I'm very lucky. I've gone to college. I have a roof over my head. I have had my struggles.
Sure.
And luckily I've been able to, within my own family, find resources, but it just gives me such hope and such pride for our state of Pennsylvania that we have so many caregivers. Like, the world really is a beautiful place. I mean, just look within this organization. So I'm getting a little huggy heart here, but
That's
I
okay.
just my heart is overjoyed with, one, just how vast you guys are with both size, capacity, and the things that you provide, and the things that you're doing to provide these agencies so that they can continue to go and keep doing the good work. So
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Our
yeah.
goal really is, right, as a membership-based organization, we really try to provide our services almost completely free of charge in order to make sure that resources stay where resources need to,
Mm,
because so many people in our state need help. People are literally one emergency away from being reliant on the welfare system or
yeah.
being back in a scenario that they've climbed out of. And
Yeah.
once you've climbed out, right, it's easy to find yourself back in that situation. So our agencies do, I say this all the time, they do such a phenomenal job of really thinking about intentional solutions and helping people, through self-sufficiency and economic mobility measures in such a wide variety of ways. And I feel really blessed to be able to be a part of this amazing network of people. And last year alone, right, Community Action touched over 503,000 people in the state of Pennsylvania
Wow.
collectively. Right. It's a huge number of people, and there are more people than that that need help. But our ability to do that, relies on the need to continue to fundraise and communicate who we are so that people fund us, so that people come to us, so that they know that they can rely on us when they need help. So it's all a part of brand and communications and part of why we invited you here today. So
Yeah.
appreciate the chance to talk
Thank
a
you.
bit. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Well, what's blowing my mind right now is if you think about 500,000 people, that's 5 college football stadiums filled with the people that you've helped. That is humongous.
It's wild. It's
It's
wild.
wild. Ah, and it's
We,
I'm so appreciative to be a part of it.
yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for your time, talent, resources, everything you're doing behind the scenes. Again, Holloway Media Services, you're a great partner with us, and we appreciate you being here today, Heather. Thank you for being a part of our episode.
Thank you. It's been such a thrill. Thanks, Beck. You guys are rock stars.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you have a question for future guests or for Amanda or I, please remember to email info@thecaap.org. That's THECAAP.org. Feel free to send us our questions, and hopefully we'll be able to address them on one of our next episodes. So thank you, Heather. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you for being a part of this episode of the Thinking Cap. Check the show notes for resources and links to other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and follow to be notified when new episodes are released. If you have any community action questions you'd like Beck, Amanda, or one of our local experts to answer in a future episode, please email your questions about community action to info@thecaap.org. Subject line, Thinking Cap.